or meant. Regional unions will not get the African people out of the reach of the imperialist ambition in this redesigning of the African colonial map, because the new crumble for Africa is nothing but a redesigning of the African colonial map. Historically, geopolitical reorganization process take about a generation to complete their course, which means that if Africans do not find a mean to stop the new scramble which started in the beginning of the 1990s, we will be recolonized through means that are even worse and more dangerous than sending armies on our soil. Right. This is what happened to the Native Americans. The Jefferson Plan. Give them liquor and then ask them for the land in exchange when they cannot pay. That's exactly what is happening today. And we're sitting down and watching. So because it is on legal agreement, yeah, I borrowed it. Yeah, you pay. It's not like someone who came and buy my stand without my authorization, but this is someone, I'm the one who asked for it. Right. Yes, you advised me, but I am the one who asked for it. So it is legal. So how am I going to say to my people that this was not, well, this isn't just? No, not at all. Especially our finance, the thing that these loans finance are not things that are what we call, that could help live capital. It is dead capital, like the building of the stadiums in Senegal, the arena, the soccer things and all of that. If you had people who could make this profitable endeavors that could employ hundreds and hundreds of young people, we could understand. That's right. But it is put in the hand of governments who don't even know what to do with it unless there is a game happening. So that's what's happening to us, So I was saying that historically this process takes about a generation. So now we are at the end of that time. The political instability in Ethiopia is today the battleground between the US and China. The Central African Republic is the battleground between France and Russia. And Mali has fallen into that trap, are obvious evidence of the battle to carve Africa once again in foreign-controlled zone. As far as the Pan-African Federalist movement is concerned, the political unification of a critical mass of African countries for the constitution of a contiguous geopolitically viable entity can prevent this new scramble for Africa to complete its. So in a nutshell, let the United African State by the end of the decade, the declaration of the United African State by the end of the decade 2020 and 2030 is not a promise that the PAFM is making. It's a warning. We are warning African people. We're not promising them that to happen. We are warning them and telling them you better get your act together. Otherwise you will only have your tears to offer to your descendant. Now, after this long soliloquy, let me conclude. In the middle of the 1980s, the Structural Adjustment Program of the World Bank and the Structural Adjustment Facilities of the IMF, which were a payment plan for the reckless debt fed to the African government by the Citibank for the purpose of using its huge stock of petrodollar, were imposed on the African countries. And a parenthesis, right before the Structural Adjustment Program, African countries had come together to create what they called the Lagos Plan. We all know the Abuja Treaty later, but Lagos Plan, which was a macroeconomic, really good macroeconomic, for the development of Africa. But when this program was declared, because the Citibank wanted its money recklessly lent to African countries to be paid, the African countries were forced to do that program. You cannot apply the Lagos Plan, the Structural Adjustment Program. And you know who was the chief of that? Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, who later on became the president of Liberia. Talking about intellectuals. Prior to the implementation of these programs and facilities, the intellectual petite bourgeoisie had no material reason to rebel against the political system which served for the maintenance of imperialist mode of production, because they were getting their share. The loans were being taken. They were having cars when you get out of school and all of that stuff. They had no reason, material reason. Some of them who were conscious, of course, have reason because this is a choice. Today, its class interests, meaning the petite bourgeoisie intellectual, are at odds with the neo-colonial political system and its mode of production imperialism. It is desperately searching for a way out of the crisis. History has taught us that radical system change or systemic change is rarely the choice of the majority of the people, but a determined minority, like in Cuba, Russia, Japan, can sway towards the needed revolutionary change. This is the reason, the raison d'etre, the reason for being of the PAFM. In other words, we believe that the organized few will lead the organized many in the unification and liberation of Africa. We don't need everybody. This is why we are laser focused on building a campaign machine of a few thousand determined individuals to usher the African masses towards the rejection through a democratic process of keeping the African countries as singletons and uniting them politically to create the United African State. Some people not necessarily pessimists, will argue that this cannot be done because those who have interest in the balkanization of the African state will not let us Africans unite. I heard that many times. They will cite the example of Nkrumah in 1963, Gaddafi 2007. What those doubters forget or do not factor in is that a people united cannot be defeated. Both Nkrumah, and this was their mistake, both Nkrumah and Gaddafi did not put the African people at the driver's seat of their effort to unite the African states or countries. The PAFM, a grassroots coalition of Africans, have learned the lesson taught by Nkrumah and Gaddafi's experience. And this is why we insist on creating national coalitions of organizations, grassroots, and uniting our state on that basis. We will unite Africa if a few of us accept and are genuinely committed to the non-existence of a price, no matter how high it is. We are not ready to pay for the recovery of our sovereign people and the reparation of the image and dignity of black people. Let's be ready to pay that price. These men have been paying the price for a long time. Let us all, in an organized way, together, put our effort together and end this. Thank you very much.
Let's give him another applause. Thank you so much. I appreciate it so much. This is a very, very, very powerful, very historic lecture, and one that we will remember, and I'm sure we will have many discussions. I have many questions, but but we have questions online as well. So let me ask, do you want to, how do you want to ask one?
Just ask one of the questions. And
Yeah, you can ask one from
Sure. So this question comes from Rich, the African elder. The question is, how do we integrate our cultural histories into the demands of the effective and authentically Africana politics, praxis, and social structure?
Okay.
Can I read it again? How do we integrate our cultural history into the demand of it? There is something that...
Are you okay with it?
Yeah. The Pan-African Federalist movement that there is a sine qua non condition for the African Renaissance, to really get going in a sustainable manner. And that is when the Garvey dream is materialized. When we have a united African state, or whatever you want to call it later, okay? The reason why we say that is that a federal government will have the capacity, let's say the foundation of art, of culture, foundation of this. That federal government will have the means to finance, to create the environment for this cultural renaissance to happen. One thing that I tell many is that it's the African intellectuals who have lost their cultural grounding. If you go to the villages where I am from, people have not lost their grounding. So it's easy, it's just to give a value to what they have been preserving for many, many years. And not replace it with the Arab and Western civilization things, It's political unification comes first.
So, all right. Are there any questions from the audience? All right. Okay, please ask it, and then we'll repeat it. Right? Yes.
Yeah. What has been the response of Arab-controlled states, Arab-controlled countries in the northern part of Africa to the idea of the African United?
Okay. Do you want to repeat?
Yeah, I know.
Good.
Oh, you want to repeat?
No, you repeat.
What is the response of the Arab countries
In the northern part.
in the northern part of Africa? Sheikh Anta Diop has a great response for that. You remember when his what is his name? This Cuban.
Fidel.
No. He was a journalist who interviewed Sheikh Anta. Carlos Moore. He had an excellent interview where he talks about that. Africans in North Africa have interest in being part of a united African state. They have interest politically, I'm talking about economically, to be connected to the Middle East. And he explained that a lot. The other one that I will say is that, my brother, the Pan-African Federalist Movement has determined what we call the corridor to victory. The corridor to victory, because we know that everyone is not going to be able to come. But there is already an area of Africa where fertile ground for unification was created. In West Africa, you had Senghor, you had Modibo Keita, you had Kwame Nkrumah, you had Sékou Touré, who tried to unite these West Africa. In Central Africa, you had Barthélemy Buganda and Lumumba, who tried to unite Central Africa, and in East Africa, you had Nyerere. So the fertile ground is already there. So we call West Africa, Central Africa, and East Africa the corridor to victory. Because the majority of the young Africans who are all today, really determined or committed to African unity live in these areas. We are lucky because this zone, if we could unite it, it is 1 billion people already. It is a contiguous state from the Atlantic to Indian Ocean, and it is the most substantial part. And of course, countries like Zimbabwe, countries like Algeria probably, even Morocco. If we want to pull in the Sahara Republic, Morocco have no choice but to come in order to try to make its case, for example. So we are not worried about North Africa. We are laser focused on where the fertile ground is. We don't waste time with where our weakness. When you are campaigning, you make sure that the area where you actually are the most like to get out to vote is there.
That's right. you have to go to your base, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
And I'll be those 3 regions.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Okay, next question. Yes, sir. Brother Stan, Mr. Africa.
Thank you very much for your eloquent remarks today. I have 2 points. One of them is
Should he have the
a guy
microphone?
called Harold Cruz, and a book comparable to this is called The Crisis of the Negro Intellectual,
Yes.
indicating the fate of the black intellectual in the United States to do what you've already discussed about the African intellectuals. So while his book wasn't highly acclaimed at that point in time, but it was an important element to quote unquote us, the revolutionaries at that time, of a different way of thinking. Especially once you go to school and become great, you go to Harvard, you become a great, you become educated. Well, we know that's so in that regard, I go to something that I wanted to thank Dr. Asante on, is the fact that we did have a great wealth of freedom schools in
Yes.
our time.
Yes.
And while they have all failed because we've gone to Temple and all these other schools and gotten we forgot the important relevance of freedom schools that we learned in the village, but in our case in the ghettos, went to school. After going to school, or maybe you didn't even go to those schools, so the freedom school was very powerful in helping giving us a better orientation of the struggle we were in, and at the same time, what we may have to do as young black people, which could even be sacrifice our lives for the inevitable struggle that we had to face. So I just want to say thank you, and hopefully we can get more of Dr. Asante's schools, maybe knock the walls out so we can make it bigger that more people come.
Can I just say one word? Is by the way, in Africa now, in Kenya, if you look up on Google, you will see the freedom schools. These freedom schools, they call themselves the first Afrocentric schools in Africa. Now, I don't know whether they're the first, because there was one in Uganda, was one in South Africa, but Freedom School all models itself on Imhotep in terms of their dress, their philosophy, and they call themselves an Afrocentric school. Freedom School. Two Kenyans created this school. They went and studied in England, came back, and they were convinced that the students need to learn their African history and African culture, and they need to start from there, and they've created this. And I just saw this a couple of days ago. So please,
I just wanted
to
say here, my brother,
Stan.
Stan, there is political changes. They happen in certain circumstances. You don't create them, it's the reality that creates them. Give you a big example, Marcus Garvey's success. Where do you think it came from? It didn't come from the fact that Garvey was very intelligent. It didn't come from anything else. It came from the fact that the veterans of the First World War, when they came home, and they were being dealt with the way that they were being dealt, they were enthralled, the supporters of the Garvey. The objective reality that is going on out there. The civil rights movement, or the independence movement, this did not happen out of a vacuum for somebody just, even if you're looking at Japan, the Heian restoration, it came about because the small samurais were frustrated, just like the petit bourgeois Africa today. The big samurai were wealthy, but the little samurai could no longer make money. They don't have no land. And this is why they were easily won to end military rule, 400 years of military rule of Japan by 6 intellectuals. The objective condition. Today, we are in an objective reality.
Beautiful.
Where if we miss this, my big brother, if we miss this, it's going to be serious, serious problem for us. And people like you, my brother here, everyone here, you don't become an old revolutionary.
No.
A revolutionary is always young.
Always yeah, I mean,
There is no such thing as retiring
absolutely.
as a revolutionary.
We,
There's no such thing like
we're
that.
in this battle. This is our battle. That's right. I appreciate
We need to be in.
we're in the battle. That's
You
right.
see, Benjamin Franklin, right here in Philadelphia, is the one who made the American Revolution possible.
Yeah.
He was the one that the French lent money to. He lent it to the U.S.
That's right. That's good. That's
People
very
like
good.
you who have created. You see, the PAFM want to work with. He is one of our champions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Molefi is one of our champions. You could be one of our champions because you have built a level of credibility.
That's right.
Campaign win when it is visible and credible.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
People like you will bring credibility to what is the campaign. The young people will bring the energy.
That's right. But people like you, Stan, you have made the foundation.
Absolutely.
The historical processes have already been set. And this is what one of the things Brother Joomaay said, which I think is very important, when he quoted Frantz Fanon. This is this generation now, with the energy that they have, given the circumstances. I mean, this is the time for heroic actions. You know what I'm saying? The historical processes are set.
Absolutely.
You hear them every day.
We are in
So there will be, as there's always been, there will be some sister, some brother, many of them who will rise up and take this day. That's what it is. It's always there. Sister Dove, Dr. Dove.
Well, victorious consciousness is what Dr. Santi speaks of. So that is what you came here to do. So I want to thank you very much for your economic analysis of almost the whole world. I always think it's important to understand that in this domination of the world, that culture is actually key to that, so that understanding that capitalism is culturally oriented by a particular European understanding of reality, which was built upon African bodies and blood for centuries. How can one make that good by using European governments and Arab governments all over Africa to model their governing structures and economic structures on the very people who were used to create it and who had their own way of economic structures and governing structures before these new ones.
Absolutely.
So I'm just wondering.
That's an excellent question.
That is
That's an
I won't be here when it does.
Absolutely.
I believe it.
Absolutely.
Because I would kill myself
Absolutely.
if I didn't believe it.
Absolutely.
But I'm just saying what you understand is that culture is key to everything.
Absolutely.
Use alien
Absolutely.
structures. And I believe we would.
We can. And we actually it's not. We don't have a choice. How could we the political model? How could we make our political model ourselves? Which is not inspired by the Western or Arabic political model. If I could resume it, that's how I understand the question. We governed before Europeans and Arabs had anything, And as a political scientist, I know that politics and economy, any form of social organ, is rooted in the culture of the people. So what the PAFM is determined to do is that we are determined to have a federal state, talking about at the top, which will kind of be inspired by the federal state of Ghana, the Ghana Empire, the Mali Empire, because these were federal systems. You know, because the value given to the person in our culture is different to the value given to the person in Western culture. So if you want political development where people can be happy and produce and be excited, why you have to look at them from how their culture, they are taught that their culture taught them that they should be looked at. You know, so the federal government, you see, these states that we have right now, Senegal state, Mali state, these are all neo-colonial states. It's hopeless.
That's right.
They are hopeless.
That's right.
Okay. When I was in Senegal in November, in October, November, I was sitting with my son, the president, and I was telling him, look, Mr. President. He said, no, don't call me Mr. President. I said, you are my president. I'm not going to call you president. I said, the problem with Senegal, you want to change the Senegalese administration. But this administration, unless you revamp it, you know, it will not work because it was designed as a colonial administration.
That's right.
You know, the people in position in the administration are not accountable to the people themselves. Even on the basic republic, you know, if you manage a portion of my sovereignty, I must be part of the people who elect you to occupy that function. That's why in the US they elect the sheriff. Because he has violence control your sovereignty. You cannot, because you don't like Joomaay and just give me a thing, or I made you angry and then you hit me. No, you know, you are restrained because you gave up your right to exercise violence. You know, this is why you elect your sheriff. So in our country, this is a problem. So let me just do a nutshell. We believe that first of all, let's restore our sovereignty by a federal government and reorganize ourselves. But that federal government will be already the beginning of the reorganization of how politics, how economic, you know, mode of production are organized, and who is the ultimate